Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. All right, everybody, I am back. Good to be back. Good to be back. Final time today. And I want to get to a few different topics here at the end of the show. I want to get to Michigan beating Washington. I want to get to A&M taking care of Colorado late. Wild game there. Iowa State. I'm officially over Iowa State. I might go on a crazy rant with that Iowa State game. But let's, before we get to all that, let's start with one quick little topic that needs to be addressed. That's your boy Clay Helton. Because what I will tell you is this. A lot of you may have gone to sleep. You may have been out. You may have been at a bar. You may not have stayed up for USC and Stanford. Well, kicks off at 10:30 Eastern time, a little bit Pac-12 after dark, and there was nothing Pac-12 after darky about it. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't compelling. It wasn't crazy. USC entered as a 17-point favorite and got absolutely destroyed by Stanford. Final score was 42-28, but if you watch the game, what was crazy was they were actually down as much as 29 points in the fourth quarter before they scored 2 touchdowns in the final 6 minutes to make it a quote-unquote more respectable 42-28 final score. And what I'll just tell you is this. The USC fan base had long turned on Clay Helton, but Saturday night you had multiple prominent alums come out and criticize this current regime, and it's just clear that this is so over. It's not going to work out, and I think we can already start thinking about what's potentially next at USC. Now, in terms of this game itself, again, a microcosm of Clay Helton and USC. 17-point favorite coming in against a Stanford team that got obliterated in Week 1 by Kansas State. Final score in that one was 24-7. Stanford looks like the freaking, Green Bay Packers coming into the LA Coliseum on Saturday night. They do what they want. They take care of business. They move the ball at will, almost 400 yards of total offense. And you're just sitting there pulling your hair out like, what is USC doing? On top of that, I would say it comes off a Week 1 game for USC. I know most of you didn't watch it. It was on the Pac-12 Network. None of you get the Pac-12 Network. But USC beat San Jose State 30-7 in Week 1. But here's the catch with that game. That game was 13-7 going into the fourth quarter, and USC rallied to make it look more one-sided than it was. And so you have the San Jose State game, which inspires no one coming into the Stanford game. You have the Stanford game, which leaves USC at 1-1 with an embarrassing loss. And again, it is just a microcosm for the Clay Helton regime. It's not only that he does not win enough, which is obviously a huge problem. It's not only that he doesn't have USC competing for Pac-12 championships and college football playoff berths. It is how it all goes down. If you have watched this team, if you have watched this regime, here is basically how a typical Clay Helton season goes. Probably beat somebody crappy Week 1. Okay, cool, whatever. A lot of teams do that. Then Week 2, Week 3, you lose a game that you shouldn't lose. In this case, it was Stanford, but in other years, it's been other teams. But what happens is you lose so many games early that you put yourself so far behind the 8 ball that you can't catch up by the end of the year. And his teams actually play pretty well in mid to late October, November, into December. The problem is they've put themselves so far behind early in the season that there is no catching up. And so you fall behind, you lose a couple games, you're already out of the playoff picture, you're probably out of the Pac-12 title picture, and on top of that, it's not just that you lose games, it's how you do it. They come out completely unprepared, they come out completely undisciplined, completely unready to play after months off. You know how Nick Saban, Week 1, it's like a lock that his team's going to look awesome and destroy somebody? With USC and Clay Helton, it's the exact opposite. Week 1, Week 2, Week 3, they are going to be embarrassed regardless of who the opponent is or what the schedule looks like. They're going to lose a game that they should not. And so when I look at this whole Clay Helton regime as a whole, by the way, I should mention with the Stanford game specifically, 9 penalties, 111 yards, pick 6 for Stanford, return for a touchdown. I mean, it was just the microcosm of the Clay Helton experience, and it's clear that it's over. And the crazy part is I've actually mostly been a Clay Helton defender through the years, okay? I think it's easy to forget the circumstances in which he inherited this program, okay? If you remember what happened, how he took over the program, it was a complete disaster and a complete dumpster fire when he took over for Steve Sarkisian. I know it's easy to forget now. Sark's the head coach at Texas, had the tour through the NFL with the Atlanta Falcons, had his run with Nick Saban last year. But that program was a dumpster fire when Steve Sarkisian left. And I don't mean to make light of it, all that stuff, but Steve Sarkisian was drinking on the job. He was showing up too intoxicated, if you will, to even coach games. I know it's easy to forget that part. That happened at USC, and Clay Helton was the guy that had to pick up the pieces. And so I always thought Clay Helton got kind of a bad rap, over the first few years because he walked into an impossible situation. And for the most part, he was actually pretty good early. Takes over for Sark, goes 5-4. His first full year, they go 10-3. That's the year they get to the Rose Bowl with Sam Darnold, beat Penn State in the Rose Bowl. 2017, they win the Pac-12, go to the Cotton Bowl, lose to Ohio State. But since Sam Darnold left, what cannot be denied, people had this narrative that Sam Darnold was the one that carried Clay Helton, and I wasn't sure if I believed it. I think it's pretty indisputable at this point. Here is what USC has done since Sam Darnold left in 2017. 2018, they go 5-7. That was the JT Daniels year, young team, whatever. 2019, they go 8-5. Last year, they go 5-1. This year, they're 1-1. So just overall, in the grand scheme, that is a 19-14 overall record since Sam Darnold left, which at a school like USC is unacceptable. Because I do think there are some schools that have a warped and distorted view of how good they can or should be. I don't think USC is one of them, though. USC is built to do what Ohio State is doing in the Big Ten right now and what Clemson is doing in the ACC and what Oklahoma is doing in the Big 12. They have the best recruiting base. They have the biggest boosters. They play in an NFL. There is no reason that this team should not be at the top of the Pac-12 competing every single year to go to the college football playoff. Instead, they're 19-14 since Sam Darnold left campus. And I would say this, that number is even a little bit deceptive, because last year they went 5-1 in a totally bizarre, fluky COVID season, and there were at least 2 or 3 games that they should have lost. Fourth quarter rally against Arizona State, they were down 14 points going into the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter rally against Arizona. Fourth quarter rally against UCLA. As much as they were 5-1, they easily could have been like 2-4, or they would have been 2-3 because they wouldn't have played in the Pac-12 championship game. But again, this is who he is, and at this point, there is no denying it. And the incredible thing is the ability of this guy to avoid getting canned. I mean, this guy, you talk about some guys have bad luck, some guys have no luck at all. This guy's got great luck because he goes 8-5 in 2019. And I actually didn't think that they necessarily needed to fire him that year. But he goes 8-5. The fan base wants him gone. And it just so happens that USC is in the process of hiring a new school president because the old school president got booted with all that academics or all the admission scandal stuff, okay? So 8-5 happens to have a new school president and a new AD. I'm sure the AD wanted to fire him, but he comes in. He has like 2 weeks to figure everything out. And if you remember, even that year, the season ended, and he didn't announce Clay Helton was coming back for another week or two, which said to me very simply, he's not my guy, but I can't find anybody better. Clay Helton says, I'm going to shake up my staff. They're going to do things different, blah, 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 this and that. Then he gets COVID after that, or that was after the 5-7 season, excuse me. Then he goes 8-5, just good enough. And at that point, you have COVID. And so no matter what happens, first you have a new school president, a new AD, then COVID happens. Well, now he's officially out of excuses. And again, Saturday was the day that it just felt like this is what it is. This is always what it is going to be, and it is never going to get solved. I thought it was interesting, Matt Leinart, who I know a little bit. I don't want to say I'm friends with him by any stretch of the imagination, but, he was kind of commenting on, just how depressing it was to look at the stadium the way that it was. Keyshawn Johnson, who is obviously a very prominent alum, hosts radio on ESPN Radio. This is what he said on Twitter. I'm so pissed. I can no longer fight on for him, period. Embarrassing him, obviously being Clay Helton. And so it's clear. The fans were gone for a while. The alums have turned on him, and it's over. What'll be interesting to see who they potentially get. I'll just tell you, I'm recording this in the middle of an NFL Sunday. Those Jacksonville Jaguars look pretty awful, okay? I don't think Urban Meyer makes it, the full 15, 16-game year, and maybe if they do, I don't know if it's going to be a multiple-year season. So maybe Urban Meyer decides he wants to come back to college football. All this name, image, likeness stuff isn't as bad as he thought it was going to be. I don't know. I mean, I heard USC fans saying, we got to go get Lane Kiffin. Would Lane Kiffin come back? I mean, it's obviously a better job than Ole Miss, but I think after the way he was treated, I doubt that he would be interested in coming back. Bob Stoops is available. Is that the kind of job that he would be interested in? I'll say this. I saw a couple people mention this. Cliff Kingsbury was the USC offensive coordinator for about a day before he got hired by the Arizona Cardinals. Maybe he makes sense as a candidate, but it's clear that there are people out there that would take this job. I think they would actually get a pretty legitimate head coach, but Clay Helton's not the answer, and it is time for him to go.